Everyone, say hello to everyone. Barbara, say hello. Sharon, say hello. Amy, say hello.
Hi.
Hello.
We are live with this very eclectic broadcast series that we're running with the great team, with Amy and her colleagues at the AHDB. And we are talking today about driving equality, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace with our three key experts. But let's just give a bit of a background to those who are dialed in onto LinkedIn and to Facebook and onto YouTube and onto our podcast series. That we all know how important it is to be inspired by both big businesses and individuals, which is why we're excited to present Talking Leaders, an ongoing initiative from the AHDB, which sees the series of inspirational speakers share their life experiences and deliver impactful stories to the ag leader community. Amy, should we just hop over to yourself? Can you just give a bit of an understanding for those that perhaps don't know about the AHDB as to who the AHDB are, please?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Max. Just to remind everyone, we're not experts in this area. We just have experience and we want to share it today to inspire all. So AHDB, levy body, cover the UK. And our role in particular in the agri-leadership team is to help inspire farmers to really focus on their people management skills and improve their own leadership skills. So Talking Leaders is about inspiring the listeners through experience. So every leader that comes to talks about their own volatility, their own challenges, but how they came through the storm and some of the lessons that they can learn to share. So hopefully the people listening in can have a think, put themselves in somebody else's shoes and take some action forward.
Amy, fantastic. And it's great to have you on. Where's worked very well previously is we've had your colleagues. We've had Mark and Isaac on, and I love the fact that we're swapping around between all of you because we can find out more about yourselves and AHDB. But let's get on to the subject about that we're discussing today: driving equality, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. And as Amy's pointed out, none of us are experts on this, but what we wanted to do was to lean on a couple of experts in their industry field, because my view is that we've all, in some respect, got the answers, got the commentary, got the views, and to discuss that between the four of us to see what conclusions we can come to. I think we've all got some of the answers. So just doing a bit of research on this whole element about quality and diversity and inclusion in the workplace, that the four key points I came up with was that if we can look to adopt these in our businesses, we can have 1, better business performance; 2, improve recruitment, retention and engagement; 3, better business opportunities; and 4, it is of course essential to manage compliance and reduce the legal risk why would you not do that? So Amy, what we need is we need our experts to come on with us with this journey so we can find out what they've seen. So in no particular order, Sharon, who are you and who are you representing, please?
Hi, Max. I'm Sharon Blyfield. I work for Coca-Cola Europacific Partners. God, what a mouthful. CCEP, as we would like to say. So hopefully today I can give some insights from the journey as a business that we've been on, but also my own personal experiences as well.
Sharon, excellent. And Barbara, who doesn't know Barbara Bray MBE? But actually, there might be some people that aren't fully aware. So Barbara, who are you, please? Who are you representing?
I am an independent food safety nutrition consultant and also a PhD researcher at Queen's University in Belfast.
Yes, we're amazed at you, Barbara, because you've got so much going on, and yet you still want to better yourself. You're going off to do this PhD in Ireland. We don't know how you fit in the time, let alone how you very kindly managed to slot myself, Sharon, and Amy into your busy work schedule. But it's great to have you on because we know we're going to find out so much from you. Just everyone, before we get going on this, we have so many graduates and people interested in the food sectors dialing in on a UK and international basis, and they always want to know what the background is of our speakers, of our experts coming in. So Sharon, let's start with you. What's your background? How did you end up being in such a lovely meeting room for Coca-Cola today? Sharon, what's your background, please?
Yeah, so in actual fact, I will very shortly be 29 years working for the organisation. Wow. So a duration, you get less time for murder these days, don't you really? But I love it. I mean, I think the thing for me is I've had what I like to say is 3 careers within the business. So how did I fall into Coca-Cola? Well, I quite literally fell into it because I got made redundant. And it was an opportunity that came along. I used to work in finance. I'd kind of gone off and done some finance qualifications at the time that I got made redundant. So an opportunity came up with Cadbury Schweppes. Was fortunate enough to get the job. And of course, all of a sudden you become part of this much bigger organization with great opportunities. So I got bored of finance because it's just all about the numbers, and I wanted to do something different. So I went into sales. Well, sales is all about the numbers, so there's natural linkages as far as I'm concerned. And then from that I went into human resource, because it's all about the people. And so I've had 3 different careers in what I'm going to say is pretty much one giant organization for nearly 3 decades.
That's Sharon, that's fascinating, because I've always found, especially with my recruitment hat on, the better people I come across are those that have been able to work in 2 or 3 different disciplines within a larger company. That there's obviously nothing wrong with being typecast, say, in a commercial position, but if you've been able to do finance, commercial / sales, and HR, that just, correct me if I'm wrong, Sharon, but that just gives you a better understanding as to how a business works, especially presumably within a business like Coca-Cola. The connections that you've garnered internally must help you tremendously within your current role, that if you've got an issue or you need to ask an expert within the business something, you'll know those contacts because of those connections, that 20 odd years establishment within a business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Colleagues often say, go and talk to Sharon because she'll know somebody who will be able to help. But I think the other thing for me is the fact that I've got an insight. I've walked into the shoes of a lot of the people who are doing the different job roles in the different parts of the business. So when I talk, so my role is head of early careers. So when I talk about, in sales, and this is the type of person we're looking for, I know it because I've actually done the job as well as recruited into the job. Or in finance, and someone's about to do their studies, I'm like, okay, yeah, I went through that. I can understand it. I get it. Yeah. And so that's why I think I've spent so long in the business, because 1, I know loads and loads of people, but 2, I just keep changing careers.
And Sharon, is Coca-Cola a great business to work for?
It is a fantastic business to work for. Nobody people do stay in organizations, but with my personality, there's absolutely no way I would have stayed in a business that duration if it wasn't a great place to work. And it is a fantastic place to work.
Yeah, I've slightly led the witness on that one, because we could just see, Sharon, by your infectious smile and the tenure within Coca-Cola, it's almost like the 2 of you are as one in some respects, in the way that you promote Coca-Cola. About a month ago, I did a broadcast with a group that we represent called Global Women Fresh, and we had a lady on who runs a vertical farming business in Holland, and she'd done her first 10 years with Tesla, and she just she said it was like working for the best friends you could have in the world, that we all enjoy going to work on a Monday morning, because we knew that we were changing. And then we did a bit of a deep dive as to why that all was, and it came from the top. And so presumably Coca-Cola, with a number of you having been in the business for a period of time, the culture within Coca-Cola is amazing.
It is absolutely amazing. I think back to, especially when I moved into human resource, and I had a connection with a gentleman by the name of Stephen Morehouse. It was like one of his early business partners. And he is now the vice president and general manager of GB. But yet he still calls me Whiskers. Hi, Whiskers, how are you? And it's because my maiden name was Whiskey, and everyone could not believe Whiskey and Coke. And it's not a joke, it's fact.
Wow.
Fact. But he still just calls me Whiskers, because that's who he knew, the young woman 20 odd years ago who he first met. But that's the kind of relationships that we have in our organization. And I know we're going to talk about inclusivity in more detail, but that's the sort of thing that kind of makes you belong and feel that you belong.
Cool. That comes across. Wow. Sharon, thank you. Barbara, so what's your background?
Oh, very different background. I'm somebody coming from the point of 3 science degrees, so I'm a big fan of studying, as you can possibly tell, but my career actually started in the NGO sector, working with subsistence farmers, and I went to spend some time in Uganda. Then I went into commercial farming. Then I came back to the UK and joined what was then GEAST in their graduate management program. So it's an accelerated management scheme for new graduates. And I did that for a couple of years, which meant going around different parts of the business, a bit like Sharon was saying, where I had the opportunity to have a stint in technical, a stint in procurement, and so on, and was able to travel. So I spent some time in France, and then I had a good 14 years in the back of all business, which was really exciting. And the good thing about starting in that way is like Sharon says, you're able to get to see the business from a wider point of view, and you become very easily connected to all the different parts of the business. You know lots of people, and you're able to get stuck in and hit the ground running. And because I started from a graduate management scheme, it meant that I had a cohort of people who started at the same time, who I kept in touch with through that whole 15-year period, which was good. And we're still in touch now. And I think one thing to let young people know is that the people you meet at the beginning of your career will often be with you for the entirety of your career. So if you fall out with them in year 1, yeah, they'll remember that when you're 50. But by the same token, if you have a good relationship at the beginning, you'll still have that, years later. And I remember when I was at Reading University doing my undergrad, I met Beth Hart, who was then Beth Hassey, who is now the Vice President of Trust for McDonald's UK. So building those relationships early. Now, when McDonald's is sponsoring the Oxford Farming Conference and helping out with our program that we do for scholars, it's great to be able to chat with her and catch up on news and things like that. And those relationships, yes, you will always be building good relationships throughout your career, but it's important that you constantly do that throughout. And like Sharon's touched on inclusivity, that's what helps with the belonging. You become part of a group. It's very different to a clique where, everyone's just doing the same thing with the same people. It's more about building those connections with people who've got the same skills or been to the same university. You fan that network out to a wider area and bring in people continuously, and you just move forward together. So it's about that positivity and that connection for me.
Barbara, one question that you'd had a very illustrious career with the food group GEAST, which is now Backable, and you now run your own independent consultancy business. Was that difficult? Was that a heart wrench to go away from a big food business, a big institutional food business, to doing your own thing?
I think it was what suited my personality, because Sharon was saying, often it's about deciding what's right for you. And yes, I'd really loved that journey, but I think it's good to know when it's come to an end and you've gone as far as you can in a particular path. And for me, I'm always looking for the next new thing, and I couldn't see the next thing for me in that role. So I thought it's something that I'm going to have to figure out by myself. And striking out on my own was a real challenge because I'd never done it before and I hadn't planned it for a long while. So I literally just had to hit the ground running. But then I immediately realized that I had to build a big network outside of my back of all contacts. And that's when I was able to transfer the skills that I'd gained during that time at back of all to my own business, and realized that I could easily network, get in contact with lots of different people, use the skills that I've got in public speaking, chairing meetings and volunteering in lots of different things to get to meet new people and really get myself out there and get my name known.
Barbara, thank you. There's two threads on there just to quickly pull out, that I meet so many people in the sort of 40s, 50s who perhaps are looking to accelerate their career. And I say to them, well, why don't you do your own thing? You got this huge knowledge, market intelligence. You've got a huge network. Why don't you go? And a lot of people, especially men, are quite frightened of doing that, because you can become the proverbial, not the most appropriate commentary, but they can become a wage slave, and you get a lot of resistance from, say, partners, husbands, wives who don't want to do that. But people who I do know who've done it, they're a far better place because they have more scope. They're meeting more people, and the money side, they might be even earning more money. But it's not for everyone. But if that's okay, Barbara, if people could dial into you and just watch you. You're very prolific on social media, to see a shining example of someone who's actually stood out of the comfort zone and done their own thing and been successful at it.
I think, yes, it's about being comfortable in your own space, and that comes with maturity. And I think it's difficult for people, and I think especially men, because it's very easy, I think, for men to develop a cohort of people around them who they trust and they're comfortable with. So to step outside of that is a lot harder. I think for women, especially if you've had kids and had a career break and come back in, we're used to disruption, and we find it easier to do lots of different things. It's very stereotypical what I'm saying, but I do believe it's true. I think women are much more open about trying something new because they're forced into that decision-making process quite early on, that life is going to have lots of changes and they have to be adaptable to it.
Yeah, well done. And my second thread was farmers. There's a lot of farmers I know, just because of the way that the sector's gone, that they've consolidated their businesses, that they might have subbed out the contracting, or they might have someone else managing buildings or managing other areas. So they're actually entrepreneurial individuals by themselves, but perhaps they're missing that interaction. And Amy, that's another reason why we've set up this broadcast with yourselves and the AHDB, so that it can learn from the likes of Sharon and Barbara, that if you can learn from the likes of these individuals, that if you do feel lonely in what you're doing, everyone's got the same problems. I always tend to find, but go and communicate, get on a course. And Barbara, you think of some of the courses that are available in the ag sector, whether it be the likes of the Nuffield Farming Scholarship, the Worshipful Company of Farmers, wherever I've said Nuffield, to step out of your comfort zone. If there's one thing we'd hope you'd learn from these broadcasts, is life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Go and have a look at some of the courses that are available, and meet some new people in your sector, because you will be reinvigorated to be able to take yourself further forward. Amy, tell us about your background, please, because it's fascinating hearing Barbara's and Sharon's. What's your background?
Well, thanks firstly, Max, for putting me after Sharon and Barbara. I feel really inadequate now. So, but yeah, so pretty much, as you can tell, from Birmingham, born and bred, live in the middle of the city centre. And when I was looking at universities, I knew I wanted to get out of the city. I knew it weren't really for me, and came across a really great place called Harper Adams, which, for me, never seen a cow in my entire life. My first week at Harper Adams, there's chickens running about. It was a complete mind-blown situation. But spent 4 years doing a business degree, got to make some lifelong friends, a bit like what Barbara and Sharon are saying, those connections that you make, they make them for life. So finished Harper, joined AHDB, my first job as a business development manager. A bit like Sharon, kind of all the numbers and stuff wasn't really for me. Progressed out, went to work for Associated British Foods doing audits. Sustainability audits, travelled around the world doing it internationally. But kind of, it's not as glamorous as it sounds, and I wanted that work-life balance back. And I remember how good the culture was at AHDB, and it just so happens there was a job doing people management stuff, and I thought, I think that's a bit more me. The number stuff is great and it's a great career prospects, but I can take those skills and put them into the people side of things. And so I've been back at AHDB for 4 years now. But yes, and like the ladies were saying, it's that kind of culture going back and remembering the colleagues that you got on so well with, having leaders to look up to within the business and kind of role models. So yeah, that's my background. Shorter than the other, but hopefully I can aspire to be like Sharon and Barbara one day.
Sharon, Barbara, isn't Amy fantastic?
Oh, I love Amy. She's brilliant. And the stuff that she's doing with OFC, being a real supporter as well, as I also need to get a plug in for our conference. But I think it's really important because it's about being visible. And I think as we go on to talk in the discussion, having leaders who are visible in society for other people who are coming behind us to look to, I think is really important. So I see Amy setting her stall out and moving that way as well.
Oh yeah, she's a leader now. She's got to be a future leader. And Sharon, I've got to break protocol now. I went to the same institution as Amy, this amazing place called Harper Adams, but they raised the bar after I've been there, because they when I went there, they gave me an unconditional offer, and apparently it was an admin mistake. So I didn't concentrate too hard on my A levels, and I was too busy building pig arcs. And when it came to the day of deliverance, and I said to Harper, "When can I start?" And they said, "Well, you didn't get the grades." And I said, "Yeah, but you gave me an unconditional letter." And they went, "Oh yeah, we did, didn't we? We better check that." So now they allow better people in, such as Amy, who are actually going to do something for the good of the sector. So let's get into this. So inclusivity. What does it mean to us, and why is it important? Sharon, you go first.
Oh my goodness me. Gosh, that's a huge question.
Boom.
Yeah, so inclusivity. Can I talk about, the dance and it's like you and what have you, things. Inclusivity, feeling welcomed, sense of belonging. Do you know what? I don't in your career or what, and do you know, other than that, it starts and feeling that you belong to the people who are growing up with, and that sense of inclusivity for you all the way through your life. I know that I worked at in West London, it's a very diverse area of the country. I went to a school that I made friends with because I just friends with it, and I followed all the way to my school, feeling part of what's going on around. It's continued into the workplace. That's been easier for me because I guess I've a bit of an outgoing personality. But what I have to ensure is that I'm with others who aren't as extrovert as I am, that they feel included, and I take steps to maybe sometimes dampen down my enthusiasm so that they can feel part of it. Because you know what, we all want to feel part of something. You don't necessarily need to feel part of everything, but you want to feel part of something. And the only way that you can feel that is if you feel that you have been included and that you belong. People often think about inclusivity from the viewpoint of, well, I come from a particular background or I come from a particular culture within it. But it's not always about that. It's just about the people that you are with.
Wow.
Welcoming you.
Excellent. Sharon, thank you. Amy, your views?
That was a really, really incredible introduction to inclusivity. Thanks, Sharon. I think actually, Max, when you opened up, you highlighted some of the areas of inclusivity. So, we're not an expert here, but if you look at the basics of Equality Act 2010, for example, there is a baseline that everybody should be adhering to as a minimum. You should be able to understand and acknowledge that there's 9 unprotected characteristics. So we're not talking about just gender equality. We're not talking about racial equality. We're talking about there's 8 other alongside. So there's a lot to get your head around. But as Sharon is alluding to, it's that sense of belonging. It's ensuring that everybody has equal opportunity and celebrating differences. But, so we're not making people feel different and there's your extra special treatment because you're different. It's actually, I want to be treated the same as, anybody else. So myself as a lesbian, I want to have the same benefits as somebody who's straight, who has marriage benefits. I want the same benefits. So there's the kind of the baseline of that, let's do the right thing because, well, there's a law there basically. Then above that, there's the economic side of it. You alluded to the retainment of staff. Now, everybody I've spoken to recently, absolutely everybody is struggling with labour. There's not a single business out there or industry that's okay for labour. So instead of going along and trying to recruit all these new people, look after the people you've got. Retention. Look after those people, make them feel they've got that safe space, that sense of belonging, sense of purpose, and you're pretty much there at level 2. And then just you know, from an economic, if people can't really get that moral compass and they want to hear it from a money perspective, there's studies out there that show if your organisation celebrates difference and has that culture of belonging and a culture of inclusivity, you're 6 times more likely to be successful as an organisation. And I'm not going to reel off loads of statistics, but that's the one that for me was a shock factor. And if you can't get over the rest of the inclusivity and buzzwords, then just think about that. If you want to be a successful business, embrace inclusivity.
Amy, do you know, you've just hit on a real vein there. There's one thing that we have an ongoing mantra about is with my recruitment head on is the recruitment and especially advertising. That so the likes of Coca-Cola are brilliant at it, and one of their subsidiaries, Innocent Drinks, Sharon is just amazing at it in that respect. That people, especially younger generation, they don't want to hear stuff like 21 days holiday. That's just the law that you have that pension scheme. People want to hear that there's financial planning, mental health awareness, gym membership, but also, Amy, one thing I don't see in adverts, I don't think, is actually the celebration of diversity within these companies, and even more so within farming and fresh produce, because we're still stuck in this trap of writing job adverts as just copying and pasting a job description over as a job advert, and it's about as enthralling as a wet puddle on a Monday morning, and you're totally on the money. That those companies that don't change, that don't bring in inclusivity, diversity, and applaud that and celebrate that, they're not going to get the talent, everyone like Amy, are they? They're just not going to attract them in, and then they're going to have a problem for the long term. Barbara, what do you think?
I was just thinking of some interesting examples back in, at school, clubs that I've joined, and in work of inclusivity when it's done right, and also inclusivity when it doesn't quite work. And one of the things from my recent exploits, you know that I do open water swimming, and I remember one time I just had my hair braided, and when my hair's braided, it's a lot bigger than it normally is. And the swim coach saw me like struggling, trying to get my hair in my swim cap. And he came up to me and went, you know, you can get these really big swim caps for people with lots of hair, and just handed me a free swim cap. And I was like, go figure, I didn't know about that. And it's those little things, you know, I've been going swimming to that same location for ages, but it's just somebody taking the time to acknowledge that, yes, you want to treat everybody the same, but there are certain things that don't work, and here's a helping hand just to give you a bit of a lift. No fuss, no drama, let's just crack on. And I think when I see things advertised on TV or a big show made of something, I think people probably don't want all that attention. They just want a quiet solution handed to them. They can get on and go about their business. So for me, that explains it done in a really good way. And I've seen it work, for example, when you take businesses, especially when they're quite male orientated. So no offense to any women who are into football and, I don't know, Formula One and stuff like that. That wasn't really me. But I remember in my first office, I was asked to join the Fantasy Football League and a whole range of things that weren't anything to do with my interest, but because I was the only female on the team, I didn't have anything else to do if I didn't join in. So I made a huge effort to join in these things, and the guys really appreciated it. But I think I've been there 3 years before somebody said, oh, let's ask Barbara, you know, what she might want to do as an activity that we can all join in. It's like, oh, thanks, guys. You know, so I knew that they were really trying to include me in everything, but it's just nice to be asked, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to share? And that's what really made me feel like, even if they were going to say, no, we don't want to do that suggested activity, it didn't matter. It's the fact is that people cared enough to find out and ask and actually acknowledge that I might not be the biggest fan of fantasy football, having come last in the last 3 years worth of leagues. Even with the help of my entire team.
So Barbara, this inclusive culture that we'd love to create within, let's just look at UK businesses, that inclusive culture, do you think is it realistic, or is it just a buzzword, or do some companies get it and some pay lip service to it, and some, God forbid, actually just greenwash it all and have the appropriate page on the web? Do you think it's getting better, that the culture is settling out, or is it just a buzzword?
I think the answer is it depends. So I'm part of a group of people in the Black or people of colour community in the Northwest, and we share our stories. It's all about positivity and helping people move forward. And some of the stories that you hear, you're like, oh my word, I can't believe that's happening. Like one woman was saying that somebody from HR came down into their office and was looking for somebody called Mohammed. So she went to the two brown guys in the corner and went, which one of you are called Mohammed? And you're like, no, that's not how it works. So you've got instances like that, and then you've got other instances where you see that people have got an advocate, a sponsor, and a mentor within their business to help them with their career and really put them out there. And you think, well, how can some businesses do it so well and others are just like, talk to the hand because the face ain't listening? So I think we've got some work to do when we make certain things important and embed them into the business. So it's not just a tick box exercise. So people aren't just doing what they think the corporate organization has told them to do, but in the rest of their time, they're making silly mistakes like that. It's about making sure that people understand why it's important. So, I'm somebody who, because I spent a short period of time as a wheelchair user, I'm really cognizant of if I'm opening a door or there's somebody out in the street in a wheelchair and I can see they're in difficulty, I notice that. And I think until you've had your eyes opened into somebody else's kind of challenges, it's not always easy to understand where that person is at. So yes, we all want to be treated the same, but we just need those little helping hands and that acknowledgement that if there is a difference or something that we're having to do that might be slightly more challenging, that other people are cognizant of that and make some kind of effort.
And Sharon, I'm guessing we need industry leaders, industry companies, especially on an international basis, to take the lead. I suppose in some respect, there's been a lot of talk in the recent COP26 by the likes of Australia that their changes are going to be business driven. And I suppose in some respects, this whole inclusivity element has got to be business driven. And can we look to the likes of Coca-Cola, do you think, because of the changes that you've made, not only in the UK and internationally on this whole subject? Can we learn from Coca-Cola?
I think that there is definitely a lot to learn from Coca-Cola, but there are many, many organisations, as Barbara said, that are doing things really, really well. But what the point I wanted to make, to add on to Barbara's point there, was even when an organisation is doing really, really well, there are going to be pockets within that organisation of resistance. And it's about understanding how you can help and support those who are resisting. What's the reason for their resistance to it? And typically it's because there is a fear of missing out on something or something being taken away. And so we need as organizations to be mindful. I mean, if I think about my own organization, it is fair to say in 2020, so prior to 2020, we've kind of been on a bit of a journey, and then the sticking plaster was ripped off in 2020. And I think we all understand what happened during that time. Yeah. And it made the business really sit up and say, we have to listen to all of our employees and understand the impact of maybe not talking about things around EDI, the impact that that's actually then having. And as a result of that, we created a number of catalyst groups, and within that, wow, our employees, can choose which catalyst group or groups they want to be part of. And so for us now, it's from the top down and the bottom up, because if it's just from the top down, it's not going to work, because that's just a one-way message. So it's got to be a two-way message. And it's going to have a lot of uncomfortableness to it as well in the beginning. But if you can get over that, because you know that you're in a protected space and it's a safe space, if you can get over that and really start to listen to those who have, had to experience maybe some of the things that they've experienced, and then become, people talk a lot about allies, and become an ally or an advocate, but genuinely mean it, then you'll see change. But, for us as a business, we are still on a journey. We haven't got it right. We haven't got it perfect. I don't think if somebody was to come up to me and say, do you know what? Yeah, we've got it all right. We've got it all perfect. I think you have no idea what you're doing then. Because if you think you've got it perfect, then I'm sorry, but you haven't.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. Do you think it took the last couple of years to actually create that change within the likes of your business, your business structure? And if we hadn't gone through what we've been through the last couple of years, do you think you would have just stayed with the status quo?
I don't think we would have stayed with the status quo, but I don't think we would have accelerated as fast as we have accelerated. Okay. I think it's
okay.
That.
So Sharon, the reason I say that, we had, I don't know if this is a politically correct phrase to use, but in the broadcast that we did with South Africa 6 months ago, we had an amazing buyer on Lady Buyer, and she stated, never waste a crisis. They managed to, here comes that word, pivot their business to sell to undernourished people within South Africa with waste produce that otherwise was going to be destined for the skip. And just from what I've just learned from yourself and other people who've looked to positively, radically change their business on everything that we've all encountered over the last couple of years, this term of never waste a crisis, if it can accelerate positive change to get to a positive answer. And Amy, what do you think? Do you think I'm talking sweet corn, or am I talking sense?
No, it's, to be honest, it's a bit chicken and egg, because actually
you go for chicken and egg, I'll go for sweet corn.
Because actually, if you're a resilient leader, and your business is set up that you've got your sort of people looked after, that when a crisis comes, they're better able to adapt to that change. So it's kind of a bit of the both way. And to kind of go on the point about what does this inclusive culture mean? Is it a buzzword? So Sharon and Barbara talked about these big organisations that potentially might have HR systems who can look after it. But it's imperative that any business, even the small business that we're used to in farming, the one-man bands, etc., you need to have that, I think it's integrity. So if you say you're going to be an inclusive employer, be honest about that and understand what it means, so that it isn't a buzzword, so that actually if you turn the mirror on yourself, would you work for you? And that's what you need to ask. Would you, and also would you expect your grandchildren to work for somebody like you? It's kind of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes to understand what does it mean, so it doesn't become a buzzword, so it does genuinely become a culture within your business.
Yeah, Amy, I applaud you on that. And Sharon, just going back to a point that you made, that within a particular business, you might have, let's give it a word, fiefdoms that need to be perhaps re-educated. I remember going to a Cranfield University conference a number of years ago, and we had a top executive from BT stating that when you have a business with over 500 people, the communication internally is really difficult. And if you have a business with lots of different business units with over 500 people within the UK, that's really difficult. And if you've got a business with lots of business units internationally, different languages, different cultures, it is even more difficult. So Sharon, I applaud yourself and your colleagues as to how you must be able to manage that within the international enterprise that's Coca-Cola. But Sharon, on that basis, have you seen either within your business or other businesses practice on this whole subject of driving equality, diversity, and inclusion that have worked? Have you got any real life examples for us, Sharon?
So I talk about organisation. We look at it from a Pacifics. Some country, because otherwise we're in a giant cake.
Sharon, can I just be very, very rude, because your internet's just dropping in and out. Then it came back again. So if we just give you 30 seconds and we'll let it clear. Barbara, have you got any real life examples of what you've seen in the workplace on this subject? Thank you, Sharon. We'll come straight back to you.
Specifically on inclusivity and making, I forgot what the original question was, Matt. Sorry.
Have you seen great practice in the businesses or the clients that you work with on this subject?
Oh gosh, I've got a few examples. So when I think about, especially in the fresh produce sector, I think there's always been a history of people from different communities coming and working there. So I think, either a history of West Indians or Asian communities working together. What I've seen is that when people eat together, that tends to be a great leveler. So when businesses are going around removing their canteens, I know in COVID it was different. You couldn't have everyone sitting in one room. I get that. But the businesses I've seen that really successful in getting people to work together are the ones where people eat together. And I remember one Bakkavor business that I worked in, it was a huge factory and there was no demarcation in the canteen area. So if you wanted to sit next to the MD, you could sit next to the MD. If you wanted to sit next to the yard guy, you could sit next to the yard guy. You could sit anywhere in that canteen. People have their little cliquey tables that, they all sit there together and sit there first. But realistically, there was no demarcation. I just found that a great leveler because it just meant that no one felt higher than anybody else in the hierarchies. You might have more responsibility than the person you're sat next to, but you were able to talk, and food was such a leveler. So people would always look at what I was eating and go, "Oh, you were doing the Slimming World diet today?" I'm like, "No, this is how I eat normally." And I'd be looking at their pie and chips and going, "Well, you're not going to go to get a long life expectancy." So there's the banter, but it's a friendly banter about food, and it's not criminalizing anyone for the way that their food is cooked or what they're eating. And I think that, especially where you've got, for example, I've got one client who's got a lot of women from Southeast Asia. They all bring their chapatis and their curries and sit and chat next to each other, where they might have some Polish people sitting with something else. And it's all just one big happy event. I just think things like that, they're not initiatives. It's just about how you manage your space. So it's a structural thing. If you set up your business that way, then it makes it easy for people to do that, rather than saying, well, we need to have a little group that meets to talk about X or a little group that meets to talk about Y. And I think in a smaller business, things like that work a lot more easily. A business like Sharon's, that's not as doable because it's just too massive. But like Amy was saying, if you have got a small business, getting people to have those points of connectivity is really key.
Yeah, that's there's a food business that I won't name that no one apart from the board of directors is allowed upstairs, and it just seems and I'm sorry to cast aspersions. I'm just assuming if they're that pedantic on that sort of point, you can imagine potentially what they are on the rest of the culture internally. Sharon, I apologize for cutting across you earlier because we want to get the best from you. So real life examples that you've seen, please.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted, Barbara, to say that we have a restaurant that anyone can sit wherever they like.
Wow.
There are some people you might not want to sit next to, but the option's there for you to be able to do it. But I think one of the big things for me is very much about the learnings from other organisations. And so recently there was the Diversity in Grocery conference that took place. Now, I didn't attend, but a number of my colleagues did. And I think what's really important from those sorts of events is to hear from other organizations, individuals, and actually just take back one or two things that you can bring back into your own organization and be able to then say, okay, I can do just that. And regardless, therefore, of the size of organization that you're part of, if it's just that one or two things that could work for you, I think that's often the best way forward.
Yeah. Oh, Sharon, that's amazing. Amy, I got to throw you a slightly curved one here. That there's a go back to my point about the farming sector. That there's a lot of farms who work in rural areas, and they'll have long established workforces that could have been with them for tens of years, and they want to bring other people in, but the owner, the manager, the farmer, they want to encourage this whole element of equality and diversity. But it's quite hard to change the attitudes within some of those farming businesses, perhaps. Amy, what do you think? What do you think would be magic dust to be able to create that change that we learned from yourself, Sharon and Barbara?
There's no silver bullet, you know that one, don't you? There's not going to be a one size fits all, and we're not going to change it overnight, unfortunately. But with all behaviour change, there will be a trigger point that will influence and inspire that behaviour. So for example, understanding your team, so things like insights, Myers-Briggs, things like that. where you can start to understand your team dynamics and the potential new team members to understand really from a baseline, from a work ethic. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't matter whether they're female, the colour of the skin, their religion, etc. We're all here to do a great job, and understanding that, you know, we have those strengths and areas of improvement will help the team to understand that baseline. I agree with both Sharon and Barbara on the aspect of, you know, having that social space and having that kind of, you know, understanding. It all comes down to communication, doesn't it? Everything we're talking about is about that communication. How do you communicate? Right at the beginning, Sharon mentioned, actually, it's not about constantly raising people onto a pedestal, because some people actually are introverts, and that would horrify them if you made an event specifically for them. So it's understanding people, how they like to communicate and how they like to be treated in their individuality to get the best out of them.
Amy, well done. I'm thinking of a slightly mad example being Jeremy Clarkson. Oh God, where's Max going with this one? So Jeremy Clarkson's been a phenomenal within the agricultural sectors, and no disrespect to BBC Country File, but there is a view that Jeremy Clarkson, with 1 or 2 series of what he's done, has done more good for the farming sector in the UK than 24 years of Country File. The reason I'm mentioning him is that a contact of mine who runs a big farm in Mozambique in Africa, he was having a bit of a problem with his workforce because he couldn't endear himself to them and vice versa. So they introduced Jeremy Clarkson, and they 15 of them with the manager binge watched the whole of Jeremy Clarkson one weekend, and now that's all they ever talk about, and they're so enthralled apparently that Jeremy's going to be doing another series, and these Mozambique workers want Jeremy to come out to visit their farm, which would be amazing and hilarious if it does. But as Amy says, it's the communication element of it. Amy, hold my hand on this one. If we don't try, if we don't attempt and just keep going, you can't expect it to happen once, but just to start that conversation, whether it be a small business or a larger business, to get to the likes of where Sharon is with Coca-Cola. Amy, what do you think? Is that the way to go?
Yeah, exactly what Sharon said. Just take one thing away, just a slight nudge, whether it's, like you say, watching Jeremy Clarkson and seeing, actually, you know, he knew nothing about farming, and now look where he is, you know, before, because one of my imposter syndromes is I'm not from farming background. They're all going to think I don't know what I'm talking about. But actually, you watch that program and think, wow, it's incredible what Jeremy has done. Equally, you know, he's got a female shepherdess who's doing an amazing job. But yeah, it's these little nudges, and it's working out what's the nudge that's going to work for you. I mentioned, you know, there's the regulation nudge, so let's actually meet the law requirements, if that's the way to think. There's the educational piece. We'll actually come and learn our stories and what that's about. There's the sort of the social side. Well, did you know that the farm down the road has got a queue of people wanting to work for him because he appeals to millennials, because he talks about sustainability? Is it things like economics? So actually, you know, let's have a look at the figures. Don't go and recruit somebody, look after your staff, and you're going to save £7,000. Or is it just the tools? You know, are some of these businesses just missing the simple templates, the tools that we can actually help signpost in the right direction? So it's one of those, it's a reset model. I didn't think of that off the top of my head. It's a model out there, but
you did.
It's one of those nudges that's going to appeal. Each one will appeal to different businesses, and it's finding the right one to start that conversation, to start that behaviour change. And you know, we just want to do a good job. It doesn't really matter about your background or whatever. So
yeah, and here comes my time again, Amy. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone, and I normally present that in the respect of a personal basis, but actually for your business, just to stretch yourself like that. Barbara, Sharon, Amy's fantastic, isn't she?
She absolutely is. She absolutely is. I mean,
and Sharon, if you want to meet Jeremy Clarkson, both Barbara and Amy are advisors to Jeremy. Apparently, I'm not allowed to say that, but
I have to say I have watched it, and it is absolutely hilarious. But one thing I would say, you know, you were talking about the those who've been for a long time, is he's into the and the knowledge of those who are experts, he's so an expert into them, to bring somebody from, get them person coming in, because we've had to do this with our apprentices as part of our early career. And initially, those long very resistant, especially to female engineers coming really resistant to it. And we talked about, well, how would you feel if it was your daughter that was being treated like this? You've got all that skill, you've got all that knowledge that you could really be sharing. So share that going to turn a tide. It's no different, I guess, in the farming industry. You take the knowledge, they don't exclude it.
Excellent. Well done, Sharon. So to everyone, we're just starting to run out of time. What would be really good is just to sort of leading the witnesses again. What are the one or couple of things that you would advise a owner or a senior manager to do to make a difference on this whole element of inclusivity within the sector? Barbara, you go first. What would your advice be, please?
I think as an owner or a business person, it's about talking to your staff and finding out what you can do for them. I think a leader works for their team, not the other way around. And I think that's the first question you should be asking. What can I do for you?
There you go. Sharon, what's your view, please?
So I would say find an external network so that you can create your safe space in. Take one or two ideas from them, but also use it as a way of sharing your fear about that you don't want to get it wrong. Do that in that safe space and then be able to bring it back into whichever environment that you're trying to support.
Amy.
So I can't cheat and just say I agree with the other two. So
No.
I think it's a combination of awareness, so getting the knowledge, being open to say, I don't know all this stuff, but where can I find out more about it? Then it's kind of acknowledging, so understanding that actually my team like it this way, and I've done my research and being a true leader and looking into your team. And then action, like Sharon said, actually just take even a really small bit of action of having a team meeting where you open it up and have an open space. That little bit of action will make somebody get out of bed in the morning, will make them stay with your job. So it's little things that will make a difference.
Yeah. So to wrap up, everyone, are we being optimistic? Are we being positive that there will be a future success to this subject of driving equality, diversity and inclusion in the workplace? Are we positive about the future, Sharon?
I think you have to be optimistic, because if you aren't, I think it's going to change. So you have to be the force that says it's going to work, and how much bang the drum, we're going to keep banging it.
Sharon, thank you. Barbara?
I agree with Sharon. We have to be optimistic. And yes, there's a little bit of realism in there that things aren't perfect, but it's about making sure that we're moving forward all of the time.
Yeah. Amy?
Yeah, well, I'm a positive Polly anyway, but just a small example. If you look at the Oxford Farming Conference and maybe a photo of the attendees from 10 years ago versus those that are going to be there this year, that shows progress.
Yeah,
so the ambition is, in the next 5-10 years, to really look at that photo of the attendees and see that diversification. I think we'll really, I'm positive about what we can do. Well
done. Sharon, thank you very much for being on. I would suggest that anyone who wants to get an understanding as to Coca-Cola, the culture of Coca-Cola, just follow Sharon and her colleagues, because it's inspiring to see what they've done and what they're looking to do in the future. Barbara's on. Barbara, how many degrees have you got now? Is it just the 16, or have I just? And if you want to get an understanding as to, as we said earlier, about running your own thing, and I've got to put words in Barbara's mouth, being happy with what you've achieved and looking to achieve more, link in, connect with Barbara, because she's crikey, she's on a mission, especially with everything that she's got going on in the next 6 months. And Amy, just all credit to you. You sort of slightly demeaned yourself at the beginning of the conversation, but one of the reasons that we brought you on was so we could learn from you, from Sharon, Barbara, and I could learn from you. I think you've been a powerhouse today, and so all credit to you. You are one to watch for the future, Amy. So thank you. So just to wrap up, we have to ask. Sometimes I'm not allowed to ask this question, but I've got to ask it today. On an agricultural context, what is your favourite colour of tractor? Sharon, what is your favourite colour of tractor, please?
Yellow.
Yellow. Good. What tractor is that? Was that a
ACB?
Oh yes, it is. Oh, got a Caterpillar. Barbara.
I'm going to go for a John Deere green.
John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Okay, Amy, you got to be careful here because you're politically enabled, corrected. Oh, I can't think of the words. What's your favourite colour of tractor, Amy?
My views are not associated with the business that I work for and all that malarkey, but I think for me, my favourite colour tractor has got to be the rainbow tractor, Massey Ferguson.
Oh, Sassy Ferguson.
Yeah.
Just quickly tell everyone about that, about the context of it.
So an initiative that's running in sort of the LGBT community of farming is AgRespect, and it's just a safe place for everybody to communicate and show that you're not alone, you're not different. And what we did is we took a tractor to Brighton Pride back in 2019, and Massey Ferguson very kindly sponsored the tractor and then stuck a big rainbow, sort of paintwork over it. And we did it again this year. We went to Birmingham Pride, which made me extremely proud, as you can imagine. And this time we asked children to do a competition to design the tractor, just to raise awareness from the so we're all inclusive. So big shout out to AgRespect and Massey Ferguson for that.
Fantastic. I'm really embarrassed because that sounds like we set that up and it was all done on a professional basis. It wasn't. It's only because we got 3 professionals on that we got so much goodness out of it. Everyone, you've been brilliant. We've learned so much today on this, and we're going to keep in contact with you. Amy, big hand to you for organising this with the amazing Sharon and the amazing Barbara, and we'll catch up with you all very, very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.